Welcome to another podcast of Authentic Conversations. I'm your host, Adele Bernard from Transition Clarity, and today it's my pleasure to bring our guest, Nancy May. She is a host of podcast Elderly Success, author of five-star rated book, How to Survive 9/11 Medical Emergencies. Nancy is a corporate leader, business advisor, author, speaker, and nationally recognized podcast host in two industries. She has spent her career with CEOs, boardroom directors, and global leaders in public and private sectors. These experiences give her the strength, resources, and foundation to keep in and provide her parents with guidance and support, both as their POA and trustee, and as a diehard advocate for unraveling the many missteps that unfortunately occur as they age. This includes saving her parents over $260,000 a year. And unraveling financial, legal, medical, and home care fraud and abuse, which she has helped other families with too. Nancy credits her father, an entrepreneur and inventor of innovation eyewear designs, and her mom for her determination for encouraging and preparing her to acquire the many skills needed to start to build and lead several successful businesses. She has transformed these competencies and life lessons into her business. Care Mandy LLC, her focus is on providing family caregiver structures, ways to get the insider knowledge, resources, access, and much needed support so they can do not become emotionally and physically crippled or financially broke. Like so many other caregivers and families do, there is a better way. Nancy has been awarded and recognized for her work in guiding and educating families for how to avoid the tricks and the traps of the industry touching the system of care in the US. And with this, it is my great pleasure to invite Nancy May to the show. Yay! Nancy May's in the house. We're so excited. Because you know why I'm excited? I actually told a couple people that you're coming on the podcast, and they're just like, "You guys are talking about that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we need to talk about this." Especially
Mhm.
like, like the people I'm talking to, we're all in this age that
Yeah.
we got aging parents. And can we learn from an expert? Absolutely. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
I want to start a little bit like the background of who you are and how you became this amazing advocate and helping people through the hardest time in their life.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on as a guest. I really appreciate that. And all your heart and energy that you put into everything you do is amazing because I think sometimes we forget to be real.
Yeah.
Authentic is a term, but I say, being a real selves. But I have a business background. I've spent 30 years in the world of dealing with public companies and corporate directors and coaching people to get on their first public or second or third public company boards but it's all been boardroom related, which is very business oriented.
Yeah.
And my dad had a business, a manufacturing business. So I grew up as, in his entrepreneurial world and then mine. And over the years, they were great. I love my folks. I mean, hopefully we all love our folks. Not everybody does, but
Yeah.
mine were pretty special. And I had been taught from an early age that I should know where everything is in case of an emergency. So I joke and I say, Mom and Dad prepared me for their death since I was 5. And what literally what to do in case of an emergency. They sent me off to school with one of those ladders you could throw out the window that in case of a fire you could crawl out. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was, yeah, I was the only kid in college who had like an emergency jump ladder.
Oh, that's funny.
So I even asked, can I leave this at home? No. But thankfully it never came in handy. So that's good.
Yeah.
And when it came time that my folks had decided to go into a care facility, their decision, not mine, they did not want to be a burden to my sister and myself, and I greatly appreciate that. But it was my responsibility to then know that eventually I would take over legally as their power of attorney or durable power of attorney, handling legal, medical, and financial affairs, and to make sure that they didn't go broke or they didn't die in pain and suffering, or when those final moments came, that I knew what to do, what their wishes were.
Hmm.
And it got to a point where early on, I knew that things were happening that I could not legally control yet because I wasn't in that authority, like a
Hmm.
financial advisor who was taking advantage of them. I could only push so far. I tried to get my dad away from the guy till I took control, got mom away from him, but not dad. And dealt with financial, I would call it financial abuse or mismanagement. Then they went to a care facility and everything was fine until it wasn't. A little over a year and a half, maybe 2 years later. And mom was having some falls and was not eating and literally starving because the care facility told me that they didn't, but it was one of the
Hmm.
cleaning ladies who told me when I came down that if my mom was not going to go to the dining room to eat, that they were told not to bring her meal in her room. So she was starving, literally. Yeah. And the cost of this care went to $30,000 a month.
Well,
That's
okay.
and that was at the baseline. It was $360,000 a year and growing.
And I understand um our parents have more money than we do. They just do.
Some do, some don't. I
Well,
mean,
yeah,
that's,
right.
yeah,
And
right?
so and so they were in a generation of you save, you look after your future. We don't know how long we're going to live. We don't want to be a burden on our children. Da da
Right.
da da. So they did all the right things.
They did all the right things. They did all the right
And
things with the right
then
intention. And then
you
you
get
know what hit the fan.
then you get these corporations
Mhm.
who, well, we're here loving on your family.
Oh,
You
that's
are
BS.
not. You are
That's total
not,
crap.
right? And I know, like when my grandmother is in the home, she literally did not want to be a burden on anyone. She
Mhm.
and we're like, well, just live with us. No, I'm not living with any of my children. So before she went to the home, she did do 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, 3 months with each kid. Right.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, cool. But once it was time to go into the home, didn't want to be a burden. And so I didn't see the financial side of it,
Yeah.
but I did see the ones who had people coming in all the time and people who didn't.
Very much so. Yeah.
The ones that didn't have family coming in on time, they're sitting in the corner. They never
Very,
moved.
very much so. And even if they do have family coming in, they can sit in the corner because families, we we tend to, I hate to say this, we tend to trust people who we think are in a position of authority.
Oh, I don't.
Well, but a lot of people do, right?
Yeah.
You're the manager, you're the boss, you must know more than I. You do not know more than any of these people running care facilities what's good for your parents and your loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
You've lived with them for your life, your entire lifetime,
yeah.
and you have to know when to say enough is enough.
And
So I ended up taking my parents out of that, and we saved them 260, almost $270,000 a year, and increased the quality of their life and extended their. I saved my parents' life. I have before and after pictures that,
yeah.
and it's not me, but it was what I knew they wanted. So like I'm not. If you ever saw the old movie Network, where the guy yells out opens a window in New York and he yells out, "I'm mad as hell, I'm not taking anymore." So that's my joke. I say I was mad as hell, I wasn't taking anymore. I was dove into understanding what the business of aging care has become, and it's a business.
Well, and I just want to let the viewers know, like in a previous conversation with you, it was basically I'm not saying word for word what you said, but basically the just I got, if you got money, they're not letting you die until they drain your bank account.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As much cash, even if you don't have money, they're going to make sure that they drain you of everything. And then if they do and you can't afford to pay more, it's like out the door. I mean, I've seen friends gone bankrupt in caring for aging parents, and that's not necessary.
Well, and it's interesting because so again, to the viewers, you're in America, I'm in Canada, slightly different, but still way too much the same. I watched friends and their family members, and I was like, after that conversation with you, I was like, oh my gosh, because everyone knows that we have the sign the paper and you can get euthanized, whatever, right?
Oof, that scares me, but that's
But
yeah,
it's not true.
yeah.
It's not true because both of these people I'm thinking about wanted to, and the care facility was like, no, you're not of sound mind, or no, some other excuse, whatever. And it's like, oh, really? But they both had money.
They'll hang on as long as they possibly can, and even if they do pass with money and you're in depending upon the facilities, but I've seen people who've gone into care facilities or continued care facilities with the idea that at the end, if they, if when a parent dies, that whatever is left over in that pool that was invested or put in, they would get 80% of that back. Well, try and get that done. That's very difficult,
Mm.
very rare to get the money out because they'll always have an excuse of, well, this was used here and there was, and trying to get the accounting of it like next to impossible. Or if you have rented or bought a condo in one of these, then trying to sell it, well, you can't sell it. It's the facility's goal to sell it. And I've seen where they actually continue to charge the family rent until that apartment or that complex is sold to another family, and you don't have control over that.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
there are many games to, or I call there are many tricks to the game. But as we had talked, it's understanding that if you understand that this is a business, and at some point your parents' lives do not have value to anybody else other than a financial value, than, as a bank would, to somebody, or, the assets in a bank, then at least it gives you a platform to decide and start thinking about what do we need to do so that I'm not making decisions emotionally, I'm making decisions rationally for the purpose or the goal of whatever my loved one's wishes were.
Okay, so here, I'm gonna take a step back. Would it have been better if your dad would have signed over control to you earlier?
Um, Well, see, I'm not sure necessarily.
Okay.
Because I didn't know that this would happen in the facility. This was what they wanted. I
No, I
understood
know,
the
but
asset.
I'm saying about like just like being more inclusive of the financial guy of the facility. Not necessarily letting go altogether, but you just being more
I don't think
hands-on.
so. I don't think
Okay.
so because I was able to convince my mom that this guy was I'll put the term in quotes, crook, was benefit to broker, not benefit to client.
Hmm.
Some people might call that a crook. It's just how the industry has been teaching financial advisors, many of them, to work these days. And that's partially because they're public companies and the clients of the public companies ultimately are the shareholders. Yes, we have customers, but shareholders have a lot more power sometimes than the clients or the customers.
Hmm.
And if I had been able to convince my dad to let go, then it would have been fine. But he had an emotional attachment to a um, an advisor who was providing poor advice.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like I said, since I've met you not that long ago, I've been like, Where are my I's dotted? Where are my T's dotted? Because I am the executor of my parents. And it's like, I don't ever want to take over. I don't,
It's exhausting. It is always
right?
physically, emotionally, financially. There will be some level of exhaustion at some point, and then when it's done, you kind of I felt like when my dad passed, because my dad passed first, that I couldn't miss a beat because my mom was going to rely on me, and she had dementia. Dad did not. So to
Mm.
be able to stop and grieve and catch my breath after dad, for myself, I didn't allow that. When my mom passed, I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me because now what? Right? They're
Because
gone.
you're, well, but you're also so tied up emotionally
Well,
and
at that point, it's like,
mind wise
right.
into having your I's dotted, your T's crossed to make sure their care is well. Like, and then also, like, so I'm going to jump ahead or differently. You were able to get them out of that care facility,
Mhm.
which was amazing, and get more life out of them because you're
Oh,
feeding them.
absolutely. Yeah,
They had more, uh, a better quality of life,
absolutely.
right? And so this is where I want people to really hear what you're saying is that yes, the care facilities, good, bad, or indifferent, is a choice.
Mhm.
Also, there's the choices of like keeping them in an apartment, having care brought into them, having what we call meals on wheels come in, whatever. That you have people coming in and out of the house that keeps them alive, keeps them stimulated, keeps
It's a
them,
different kind of activity. And then
yeah,
I mean, ultimately, when you're in a facility, we'll call them, the facilities don't like to be called facilities, but been a care facility, and I use the term care in quotes as anybody who's going through this learns to understand. And some of them are beautiful. I mean, but they're sold like hotels and they are not hotels. And they are not medical facilities because they are not licensed for medical. They are licensed for a different quality or different type of service. But when you have one aide or one worker that can do hands-on care for every 17 to 20 residents, that what can we expect? We expect everybody to be there at the beck and call of mom or dad if they need it, and that is just not physically possible.
yeah.
Yet, if you've got somebody in your home with one parent or two parents, and there's one person on one shift or two people in one shift at a time, now you've got a totally different level of
Yeah.
quality. And again, it still depends upon the quality of the individual that you have in your home helping.
Well, okay, so do the cost comparison for me. So
Mhm.
$30,000 in the facility compared to they're in their home. That,
It
oh,
ran
that's,
about it ran about $100,000 a year with everything.
and the facility was 260,
It came to 360. Yeah.
360. So you're saving $260,000 keeping them in a home, in their home.
Well, we bought a house, so now we had an asset. So we invested in an asset.
Hmm.
And we brought in, I had a team of 6 to 8 individuals with one lead person. So I wasn't managing 8 at one time. I had one person. I said, you are the manager. I'm not here. I'm 1,200 miles away. You are the one in charge. I would speak regularly, if not sometimes daily, depending upon the situation, or 3 or 4 times a week. But there was always a text check-in. How are things going in the morning? What's happening in the night? Just let me know. It's just sort of a not a micromanagement, but just a way to let those people know that are working with you or working for your folks that you are still one, the boss, and still it is your family and it is the quality of care that you demand. And you are building together with a team. And if a team member gets out of sync, time to let them go. It's
Yeah.
constantly managed the ebbs and flows. And the hardest part to learn if you've not been in a hiring and fire situation is to say, off with her
Bye.
head.
Yeah.
It hurts. It
I
hurts.
no, I was,
Even if they're not good people, it still hurts to do.
no, it was a running joke because my parents had a wholesale food company, and the running joke between the staff was like, "Who's she going to get rid of this time while they're away?" And I'm
Right?
like, "I never got rid of anybody. I just said, are you happy? No, no, I'm not. And then they go, I'm resigning. and
Yeah,
and it
but
was
that's
really
okay.
funny because my parents were like, going, are you getting rid of any of our staff while we're away? And I'm like, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. It's okay because keeping the balance of everything, and people have said, so how do you hire aides? And I said, I hire for attitude. I can train for everything else. If the
Oh,
attitude,
perfect.
right? If the attitude and the desire to do good and do well are not there, they're the wrong people to work with you.
Yeah. Well, and I say that I have a recruiter friend, right, who recruits for offices, and I'm like, stop recruiting off the resume.
Well, the resume can help.
No,
Um,
they get you the phone call to maybe have an interview, maybe not. But if they come in and there's like no personality, like the fit is more important than what the paper says they can do.
oh, I agree because you can train on competency.
Yeah.
You can't fix attitude
No. And trust me, I if
or
it was
morals or values or anything else like
if it
that,
was
right?
about competency, this show would never be on.
Yeah,
But I'm still here.
right.
And people are still coming on. So we're gonna keep going.
Good.
Right? Because when I was like, do a show, do a podcast. What? I don't what?
Just let her roll.
and then of course all you're like, well, comparing whatever. Because the more importantly, and this is why I wanted you on the show too, is the reason I do this show first and foremost is I'm having people on that have information that people are not talking about.
There's a lot of the stuff we're not talking about. You're right. It's a scary time.
And I want like and I don't know if you're resonating with me more now because now I'm like, oh, I'm in her position.
Mhm.
Whoa. Right? Like, do they have a year or do they have 10 years? Like, I don't know.
You don't know. We don't
And
know.
I'm saying I'm gonna get all the information I possibly can from the people who have gone through it ahead of me that have learned so much that maybe, one or two tidbits that you share today will help ease some of the decisions for somebody listening.
Yeah. Just be a sponge.
Yeah. And so that's where I'm saying like if that's all I do with this show is give one nugget or two nuggets to somebody who's listening,
Then it's a good
my
thing.
job is done.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. And that's where I feel the most change is going to be happening as we come out of the horror of the 4 years is we're here in community and in unity, and we got to be kind and loving to each other.
We've forgotten what community is, I think, in many cases.
Well, because we're busy beings instead of human,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And it's about coming back to community and being human and being kind and loving and compassionate. And the thing is I like I my heart breaks for some of those people that are working in those facilities because they're in a rock and a hard place.
And many of them want to do well and they
Yeah.
try. And management or the powers that be
Hmm.
do not give them the tools, the resources so that they can do well without getting hurt physically and emotionally themselves. And that's not fair. It's really not fair. It's not
Well,
fair to them, and it's not fair to your parents who are paying for this service.
but I even hear it happens in hospitals, like with
Oh
nurses and
yeah.
stuff, because the nurse wants to spend an extra 3 minutes with that patient, and then they come out and the charge nurse is going, that was too long. And they get black marks against them. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
Like,
Then so be it. Then I'll go to the next because those people are in such great demand. I had heard a nurse in who was talking about hospital aides and workers that they need to be able to provide the care to people who are there in the hospital for an extended period of time, one day or two or four
mm-hmm.
or weeks. And they said it's now up to one patient for every 30 or one caregiver for every 30 patients.
Hmm.
So you can imagine one of my biggest pet peeves is if you have a parent or a loved one that's going into a hospital, make sure that somebody is there at their side 24/7
Yeah.
because accidents happen when you're gone. People get out of bed, they have things they get hospital induced delirium, or it's like a hospital induced dementia where there's a lack of understanding what's happening day in, day out because your day doesn't change. You've got four walls. Sometimes you don't even know if the next day has happened because you can't see outside.
Yeah.
So, it's like being a rat in a cage to some extent. Maybe a bad analogy, but still, you don't have any frame of reference to know what day it is, what hour it is, like, other than the clock on
Well,
the wall, or who the president is, and all the stupid questions that they ask you. It's like, why the hell do I care? I
yeah.
just want to get out of here, right?
Yeah. But I mean, I know even when I was in the hospital and I was just like, thank God I had the window.
Yep.
And then people are like, you want a private room? No, I do not. Like, right? I like, nope. Especially back then, I didn't like alone time. Right.
Or I hate
And
when the window overlooks the cemetery.
yeah,
It's like, don't
I
put me there.
yeah, I had it looking over the freeway, but that's okay. But the thing is, we're in a joint room and my friends and family would come and we'd include the lady across and her
Uh-huh.
friends and family, they'd include me. And so it became the party room, of
Oh,
course,
that's good.
right?
That's
And
good.
so, but I can't imagine, like had my wits about me. I knew what was going on. I couldn't imagine if you have a little bit of dementia or Alzheimer's and you're like, where am I? Because five
Or the
minutes,
drugs, you may be on medication that disorients you too. And it's not necessarily you,
yeah,
but that does happen. Yep.
yeah. And like it's crazy. And the thing is, I remember this is way before, like this is probably 20, 30 years ago. I remember my neighbor, she was a nurse and her little boy was going through cancer.
Mm.
And um she said, the hospital keeps calling and I go, why aren't you answering? Because if you answer, you must go in or you're terminated. And I said, I'd take my chances in quitting and
Right, right,
be with your son.
right.
Right? But of course, like everyone needs the
I understand.
insurance, right?
Mhm.
To keep going. Like how do you help your son without insurance to pay for his care?
Next.
Yeah. It's this is a crazy topic. And I'm so glad we're talking about it because any insight we can help people with or help people that are in these fields getting like just pressure cooked by the corporation of it to trust that they're in the right place and we appreciate what they're doing and what they're trying to do.
Saying thank you to these people is really that are there are amazing. When a couple of times my dad was in the hospital and my mom too, when I'd be down and visiting predominantly towards the end of their life, when things were not going very good, I'd come down and deal with a variety of concerns, but I always brought a 2 dozen donuts, a
Yeah.
box of Joe. If it was later in the day, I'm bringing buckets of fried chicken to the nurse's station. I brought everything.
Yeah.
And then when dad needed some time to himself and sleeping, I'd bring my laptop outside. I'd set up a little table. I'd find a chair and table, and I'd sit outside his room. And the nurses told me I could set up shop at the nurses station. And they asked, could you not leave ever again? So we'd crack jokes and talk about things and just tried to make their day better because I knew if I made their day, they were good people trying to do good work, and I could see the
Yeah.
pressure that they were under. And if their day was better, my dad's day was going to be better, or my mom's day was going to be better. And, a little kindness goes a long way. My dad actually celebrated his 99th birthday in the hospital. He left, we got him out that day, and the entire staff in the cardiac ICU got him a cake. And
Oh.
yeah, it was a great chocolate cake. Oh my God, it was delicious. And I didn't want to leave it behind, but I did. And we had an aide with us, and she said, well, can we pack this cake up? And I said, no, we're leaving it here. We're leaving it here for everybody else who deserves it.
Yeah.
We don't deserve it. They do. Yeah.
Well, you deserve it. A slice
Well,
and to
we all had a
celebrate.
piece. We all had a
Yeah.
piece. But the rest of it, I mean, really, I didn't need an extra piece of chocolate cake. Though, they went out and did the extra mile to surprise us
Yeah.
and had a card that they all signed and some balloons. It was a sweet and wonderful thing that they did that I'm pretty sure they didn't do it for everybody else on a birthday.
Oh, I guarantee they didn't
Yeah,
because that's coming out of their paycheck,
absolutely. Yeah.
right? Like out of their take home pay to
Mhm.
celebrate your dad. But that just shows what an impact you and your dad did for them too.
Every day counts for everybody around you,
Yeah.
not just yourselves.
Yeah. And that's so true and that's so important and it comes down to like whether you're building a business, whether like whatever, just be kind. Be
It makes your
compassionate.
day easier when it's the most stressful.
Yeah.
And sometimes you go to bed like grinding your teeth, thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna do next." Like as I know about you, but like the stories will go through my mind left and right and left, and I just like just chill out, just like doesn't always work that way.
Yeah.
And that's you have to tell yourself that's okay. You really do.
Well, and I think also of how many families wait till the last minute?
More so than not.
And it's like, where were you when all the good times were happening? Don't all of a sudden get this guilt trip and, oh, I better go spend time with my loved one before they kick the bucket.
I did a podcast, and I was talking about uh, stories and things that we sort of forget to do in spending time with those that we love. And it's the old Cat Stevens song, Cats in the Cradle, Silver Spoon, little boy blue in the mail, when you gonna come home, at I don't know, Dad. I don't know, Dad, but we'll
Mm-hmm.
get together then. And then it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to remember that it's harder to live later on after they're gone with regrets than it is to spend a little bit more time that may be burdensome in other parts of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But don't live with regret after the fact,
Well,
because that's going to last the rest of your life.
and it's also like a little bit on the side of what I do is they've just left their physical body. They've never left you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And it's knowing that, oh, I wish I could talk to dad. I wish I could talk to mom. Or I'm like, they're here. They're sending you
Yeah.
messages all the time.
I feel it like right now. So I was like, oh my God, there must be something going on because I just got a tingle.
Yeah, they're here. They're saying
They're
we're
saying
with you.
you're doing good,
Yeah.
just
Right.
help
And
others, and
and it
that's what
was
it's
fun.
about.
It was funny because my grandmother used to always watch Young and Restless. And she'd say, well, keep up with it. And I'm like, okay, grandma. Okay, grandma. Right. And the other day, I'm like, grandma, I don't have time for Young and Restless today. And she's like, keep up with it. I'm like, well, I haven't kept up.
Whatever.
I haven't kept up with it. Like, but it was just funny. Like I haven't seen an ad or anything for that show in probably 20 years.
Hmm.
And the other day I was like,
But the
yes, you're
message
with
came up,
me.
right?
Yeah. 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 She's with me. She's always with me. She's been my guiding light all my life.
That's good.
So, and yeah, I mean, I like, um, and that's the thing about now is like with Zoom, with
Mm.
texting, with you have no excuse not to talk to elder family members that
No, absolutely. Even if they don't want to talk to you. My mom was not big on talking on the phone. Actually, my dad wasn't big on talking on the phone. He'd chat for a little while, but that's okay. He just needed to hear a quick voice. And if you can't do it by phone, put a note in the mail, put a letter in the mail,
yeah.
put something that's tangible. Every week I would do what I called it letters from camp. Because as a kid, my dad and mom would send me letters at camp, and my dad's handwriting was horrible. So our whole cabin, we'd get together, we'd try and decipher my dad's handwriting. Mom's handwriting was always beautiful. But as they went into a care home and then to their own home, I wasn't there. So every week I'd basically do like Nancy's newsletter. What happened, pictures on my phone, throw them in and send them down.
Yeah.
And my dad loved. I found some of them here. He's got this one arrived on such and such a date, and he's made a note on it. So I know he read that. If he couldn't read them, the girls would read them for the aides. And my husband was good because they saved them all and they put them in a binder. Now I've got them on my computer, but they saved them in a binder. And my husband hadn't read any of these.
Oh,
And he's
wow.
reading through them now. And he says, "This is amazing." And I said, "Why is it amazing?" He said, this is the history of our lives for the last 10 years that I didn't know existed. So he's reading through some of the things that I did that he didn't necessarily know about, like just standing in front of Rockefeller Center, taking a picture of the tree at Christmas time, or whatever it might. I just took pictures of tulips on because we were up in the New York area, pictures of tulips on Park Avenue that would pop up in the springtime, and because they were beautiful, I shared them and put them down. And then it doesn't have to be anything special. Um, cool
Right.
bathrooms and fancy hotels. I took pictures everywhere.
Well, but that's the thing, like when people like I tease with my family, like, okay, obviously the youngest, there's no pictures of me. And my mom always defends herself by saying there are pictures. They're just on slides and we have no way of seeing them,
Yeah, my dad did slides too. Yeah,
right? But I'm saying for 10 to 1, there's still really not that many pictures of me,
that's all right.
right? But because the first one always gets the pictures.
Well, your pictures were more special than that's
Well,
all.
yeah, I like that idea.
They were
So,
more purposeful.
so I watched my great grands, right? The
Hmm.
nieces and nephews, and the oldest one had a lot of pictures, but now it's like you can't even find him
Right.
to even take a picture because he's now more teenage years and whatever. And the middle girl, she's take pictures, take pictures, take pictures, right? And the other one, like he's just like pictures, nah, and he takes off, right? And
Mm.
so, yeah, like it's really funny, right? To see the different personalities. To do we have a phone in our face? Do we want a phone in our face? But then I love the fact like they always have phones in their faces because that's the only way I see them,
Yeah,
you know. And so it's enjoy the moment of everything.
absolutely.
So how did being that boardroom rock star help you in this transition for your parents?
Well, what it did is it, I'm not sure I realized it at the time, but in taking over, I realized that I had, first of all, had a leadership role. They put that trust in me, and I knew how to make decisions on fish or bait at times. Sometimes you allow things to happen for a while, and we're afraid to make decisions, tough decisions. But in order to make sure that my folks were safe and well, I said, look, now I am the CEO of Mom and Dad Inc. It's kind of where I put, right? Because they're relying on you and somebody has to make the decisions, even if you have a younger sibling or not. Knowing what to share and how much to share so that, as they say, the buck stops with you.
Mhm.
And sometimes a little bit of information is all that needs to be shared in order to do the right thing. But taking that and understanding that there was a certain level of organization that my parents I was dealing with, like I said, it's Mom and Dad Inc. There's a business of taking care of a parent. And if you can look at that as truly an organized structure as much as possible, yeah, things get a little wonky as time, but that happens with every business. There's things that go astray and things that you make mistakes on. But trying to shorten that path so that everything that needs to be done happens in a very functional, organized manner. As much now, I'm not anal retentive by any means. I'm a little like ADD, ADHD at times, so it gets a little wonky at times. Creative, I'll call it creative. But being able to be fluid and flexible and still firm is critical. And knowing how to work in those environments. I mean, for me, I was always told that anybody at the top of the food chain or any at the bottom of the food chain We all are still good human beings,
Mm-hmm.
and you treat people with equal respect as a peer, no matter who you are. So when a doctor comes in or a hospital makes a decision or doesn't make a decision and you have to be firm, I always knew you go right to the top, you go right to the powers that be. If you're not getting what you want, you don't put up with any BS. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
This is a life or death situation or not, including to the point where the hospital with my dad did not want to do a procedure on him. That was a life-saving procedure. And I knew my dad's wishes were to fight to the very end till he couldn't fight anymore. And he still had some time left in him. So I was not going to just roll over and be a victim or let my dad be a victim.
Mm-hmm.
So they were pretty sneaky. They would not. That was actually the cardiologist who told me I had a decision. I had the right to say that they had to go through this procedure and that they couldn't stop. But I had to go to the powers. I had to basically put myself in front of I would call it a hospital arbitration board to make the decision. And they cut that down to like 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes before that operation procedure was supposed to happen. But it gave me time when knew that I had the option to ask for it. So I got on the phone with everybody in my network, from the insurance companies to Medicare professionals that I knew from the inside, not just from the superficial perspective, but I still have a pretty extensive network. You never stop.
Yeah.
But I had people who were at very powerful positions. What's going on? What's this going to cost? What are my rights? How do I push this forward? And within 45 minutes to an hour, I had all the information that I needed,
Wow.
including the estimated cost of this procedure, which was about $30,000. So looked at our assets, figured out what the situation was. If they were going to say no and they were afraid of dad dying on on the table, because it would be a ding on them financially and they may not get paid, I said, here's a check. You want it? This is what we're going to do. If it's a matter of cost, then they backed off. Um,
Wow.
but there were 7 people in that room, including myself and the cardiologist. They did it last minute in a dark room with low lights and no windows. And they did not allow me to sit at the front of the table like I wanted to. I was pushed off to the side and I held it together. I was good until the very end, where I cracked a little bit, and the cardiologist put his hand on my shoulder and defended my situation and said if I didn't know Nancy and see the quality of care that she was providing to her folks to make sure that they lived well and safely, I wouldn't be here supporting her. And I didn't know that he would ever have done that. He
Wow.
was a very quiet, silent kind of character. And you know, that I shed a tear there. I didn't like go blubbering, but I was like, kind of thing.
I know, but it's those quiet, silent type that are taking in the room all the time and watching when they need to speak.
Yep. And but they knew that I was pissed, and I was strong and firm, and I was doing what my dad's wishes were.
Well, okay, so now I'm going to spin it. So you have all this background in able to talk to boards and do all that. Put your sister in that position.
I think it would have been a lot more difficult for her.
Yeah. Like, and it's funny because not funny, but my sister and I have had those conversations, right? About, like, what do we do? What happens? And she says, I'm the plug puller. All the paperwork, that's you. And it's so true.
Yeah.
She can say enough. They've suffered enough. Let's pull the plug. They're gone. They're not coming back. The people we knew are gone.
But that was her decision. That was not necessarily your parents' decision. And I think the most important thing to know is what your parents really want
No, but they
in the
gave
worst case
me all
scenario.
the paperwork.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah.
When we got done with that procedure, they had to they had to go in through I guess it was a catheter type of device that went in through my dad's artery and groin, and they can't sew that spot up.
Hmm.
So what in order to stop the bleeding or There's a very, oh, there's a lot of pressure that goes on. There are several people there with him at the time when they took this tube out, and they didn't want me in the room, in his room when that happened. And they putting it on for about 20 minutes to make sure that the artery would close up and clot. And when they were done, I went in and my dad was kind of silent and his eyes were closed. And he finally said, "That was the most pain I've ever been in my entire life." I didn't say anything. And then he said, "If we didn't do that, would I have died?" Whoa, that was, what do I say? Right.
Hmm.
So I'm like losing my breath of thinking about it too. When I said,
Yeah.
I just quietly said, and almost to a whisper, "Yeah, Dad."
Yeah.
And then he just did close his eyes and said, so he knew that this was, he's coming to the end of things, but I was doing everything I could to make sure he got what he needed and what he wanted. And that was it.
Yeah.
But knowing those things are so critical. And those are conversations that we don't typically have with our parents and our loved ones.
Well, like I even just this week went through some stuff myself of like, okay, what is going on? Like I was out walking, having a good time, and it was like I hit a brick wall,
Mhm.
right? And then it got to the point like I could barely walk to get home, and I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Long short of it, like there was some stuff going through the lineage of the female side of my family. If I didn't know how to do anything about this, like it would take a person out,
Yeah.
right? Like I was just saying to someone this morning, like I have never had a baby this time, but if that's having a baby, I had 10 in one go. Like I physically thought I was dying.
Yeah.
And I thought, what is going on? Like this is nuts. And so when you think about your dad and you think about that was the most painful thing he's ever gone through. And it's like, would you have done anything different? No, because his will was to do everything until he decides to go.
Right. Until his body gives out, we can't do anymore.
Yeah.
But to I wouldn't say force, but it's a term I'm going to use right now, to force or give that responsibility to make those decisions on somebody else when they don't know what you want, I think is wrong.
Yeah.
It leaves such a scar on somebody to know whether they've made the right decision or not. And
Yeah.
the hardest thing for me when that time came was to sign those DNRs. My dad didn't have a DNR. He didn't want one. He literally had in his wallet. He had a little piece of paper that said in big ink, "No DNR." It's like, okay, Dad, I got it. Where my mom was totally opposite. She said if they get to a point where she's going to be a vegetable, make sure that they shoot her. And we
See, and
couldn't do
it's
that either.
but I know, but it's interesting, right? So this is where I have conversations with my nursing friends, and I said DNR, no DNR, right? And they all unanimously say, do not resuscitate. And I go, really? I said, I would have thought you would have done. They said, do you know what the body goes through?
Well, and it depends upon the age, right?
Yeah, like if you're up there, like your dad's age,
The
they can
frailness, the body is
they
frail,
can
and every
break more
single bone in the
bones.
chest will break. Yeah.
And so like I've already seen my dad with a couple cracked ribs
Mhm.
when he was younger and healthier. I couldn't imagine doing a DNR,
Right. Yeah.
right? So yeah, it's a tough one, boy.
It's difficult. And, when is enough enough? I don't know. Everybody's different and those decisions are different. When my mom had we had her 91st birthday, and the week later she had a massive brain aneurysm and was comatose. And so when my sister and I flew down that night, and she was out in Oklahoma, I was up in Connecticut, we flew down. Next morning, we are at the hospital with the emergency room doctor who had taken care of her in her room. And he said, "What do you want me to do?" And he was not American. He's from a foreign country. So the understanding of our ways are a little different and culture. And I said, "Well, my mom said if she ever got to this point, we should shoot her." And he was like, "Oh, we can't do that. We can't do that." And I said, I tried to explain that it was a figure of speech, but no, we're not going to do life extending process. And they had wanted to fly her out to do brain surgery. Absolutely not. Those decisions were easy for me to make.
Yeah. Well,
To
it's
see her
good.
leave us, was not easy, but we brought them both home to make sure that those last 10 days of their lives was in their home, surrounded with people who loved them. And that's all that mattered.
Yeah. And that brings up the other question of like the whole hospice care.
Yeah.
Those people are angels.
Well, some are better than others.
Okay, I'll take your
I
word
will
for
say
it.
there are some angels and there are some that I say WTF, which is not wine, turkey, and Thanksgiving.
That's funny. I've never
Yeah.
heard of it that way.
Yeah. I've heard that as I use that. And I was like, it's, put a little humor into it, right? So there are some good people. And then there are others there. We had one with my mom who actually one after my dad had passed that I would say a social worker. I complained and I said, this woman should not be in this business and she should be let go.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how bad she was.
Oh, that's
She
too
caused
bad.
more harm than good.
Well,
But we also put walls on it. When I saw what was going on, I was like, get her out of our house now.
and that's the thing, right? Like, are you doing it because this is what you're really called to do, or are you doing it for a paycheck?
Yeah, it depends. But in hospice situations, it's very helpful to get to know each and every person that comes through your door because they have lives and you don't know what's going on. And in many cases, well, they all have multiple families that they're taking care of, and they're under stress and they see death and dying, and they may be having it in their own lives, in their own houses.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah,
we had one head nurse that with mom, her husband was dying while she was helping us take care of my mother. But if we hadn't asked and didn't know, I wouldn't be able to have that understanding, that empathy to make sure she was okay too, so that
yeah.
we could take care of ourselves as well.
Wow. This conversation is just the most fascinating, heart wrenching, insightful. Like, I mean, I'm just like, woohoo.
I think one of the biggest things we can do as caregivers, whatever label you want to put on yourself, is to really understand and get to know a little bit more about beyond the surface of everybody that is touching your parent or loved one who needs the help and care. And if you understand who they are and know who they are, then you can have a better ability to make the decisions that you do, whether it's keep them on board, get rid of them, um, understand their situation so that you get better care or not. But it's not a function of it's a function of the industry, which is hard. But understanding the industry and still knowing that there are good people and you want to get to know those people and who they are,
Mm-hmm.
because that impacts you physically and emotionally and your parent and
Mm-hmm.
and your parents' well-being too.
Well, and that brings us back to how we connected.
Yeah.
I reached out going, wow, you're fascinating. I want to talk to you. And you're like, why do you just want to talk to me? Like,
Why?
yeah, don't
Don't
sales
waste my
pitch.
time. I
Yeah,
won't waste yours.
yeah, don't sales pitch me. And I'm like, all right, right? Like, because it comes down to human connection.
Mhm.
If you want the connection, you'll reach out. If you don't, all good. Well, in my case, all good, right? Like,
But some people reach out just from a superficial perspective, which is why I think I was in a really kind of cranky mood that day that you reached out and said, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. Tell me what you need and then let's decide.
well, and but that's fair. right?
There's
Like,
that boardroom experience.
no, no, but I mean, but because when I reached out, it was so quick on a networking event. I didn't even go back and see what you actually did. I didn't go to look at a podcast. I just had that guttural feel.
That's fine. You usually
No,
get
no,
that and
no, no,
trust it.
and so I'm going, yeah, well, maybe if I had taken that time, maybe you might have been in a difficult state. That's getting back to know who's in your home
Yeah.
helping your parents. But it's also, what advice would you say to somebody that their parents aren't forthcoming with how they
Had
want their
that.
life? Like, how would you go about that?
So, parent that they don't care about or they don't have a good
No, no, no,
relationship with.
about that they like my parents come from the tropics, right? So they're
Mm.
just like, flush us down the toilet. We don't care. Like they don't want a burial because they came from an island, like a place where they don't bury people because the water will float them back up, right?
Mhm.
So so how do you get that deeper conversation of before anything happens, what are your wishes?
That takes, it's not just a one-off conversation.
Hmm.
It's a conversation that, in our particular case with my folks, it was a lifetime, and it was not obsessive, right? But there was always the what if you would be okay as children. Here's what would happen. You'd be safe. Here's what's going on, and we had these conversations. Sometimes in jest, and but they just became part of our lives over the years. If this happens, this is what I want.
Hmm.
If this happens, these are where the papers are. You should know where it was just part of preparation, part of life planning. It's like
Yeah,
knowing where the bank is, the bank account is, knowing where the car keys are, like knowing where the will is, type of thing.
yeah.
But if you haven't had that conversation and it's uncomfortable and your parents don't want to do it, then one tip I have is to decide what you want and then say to mom and dad, I've been thinking, I've got kids or my husband or just thinking for my own planning. Um, I decided I want to talk about, this is what I want. And in case I go before you, that I
Oh
want you to know
yeah.
what my wishes are. Have you thought about yours? Like, what have you
Yeah.
thought about? And
You're good.
one friend had used this idea, not so much for her folks, but with her kids. And she had like 5 or 6 kids, and they were all in the car going from Connecticut up to Vermont to see her parents. And so they made a game of their final wishes, what they wanted. And
Oh
one of the
wow.
children brought out his laptop and they all made like, I want to be buried in a dress. No, I want to be, they scattered across this. If this happens to me, I want to live forever. Cut my head off and make me cryogenics. I want to freeze. I'll come back 25,000 years later. So they created stories. And one of the kids typed everything out and put it on their laptop and they had a document and they had fun with it. But
That's
they
brilliant.
were all surprised that every child's, and these were not kids. They were from I think like 13 on up in age.
Yeah.
Everybody had surprises about what they wanted. And it was interesting. She said, we laughed, we sang songs, we played, we made a game out of it. So you can do that too if you've got kids. Make a game of it.
That's
Uh,
brilliant.
and have some
Because
fun with it. It depends upon the
because
age of the children,
no,
obviously.
I know, but the thing is that I don't know, maybe it's just me, but like everyone around me used to always think death was just this awful thing and how sad and all you're crying. And it's
It
like
is sad.
it is sad, but it's also they're just leaving this suit,
Yeah.
right? Like we can't be attached to the suit. We have to be
I don't know.
a,
I'm pretty attached to it right now.
well, I know, but I'm trying to like through my life I used to like because I used to question why I found all the people who lost their dad or parents really young. And
Mm.
everyone's like, you're so lucky, you're so lucky. And I'm like, all right, yes, I am. I'm not saying I'm not. And I'm very blessed that my parents are in good health and they're going strong and whatever. But on the other hand, I've never been attached to the suit
Yeah,
because,
that's a good thing. You make every day
well, yeah,
worthwhile, right?
because like I'm probably closer to my grandparents now that they're on the other side than they were in life because they never lived anywhere near us.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So they may as well have been on the other side, right?
Right.
We didn't like, I'd write my grandmother's letters and 3 months later I'd get a letter back that I couldn't read because it was chicken scratch,
Right.
right? And so it's just like, but I have more conversations with them now with them on the other side than I ever did alive.
Hmm.
So yeah, and I know I have my own drum and I beat to my own drummer. So I do
That's
think
a
of
good thing.
things. Well, and that's why it was interesting when people are like, "Oh, you're having that conversation." I'm like, "Of course we have having this conversation." Because I've heard too many people get slammed up against the wall and they're like, "I have no idea what my parents wanted. What do I do?"
Yeah, bad for them, bad for you.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
all I see is dollar signs. Like they're gonna rake you dry. And
yeah.
I've also seen friends sit by their bedside of their parents because they're keeping them alive. And I'm like, why? And then I met you.
Yeah, that's truly that's an individual choice that your parents should make, not you shouldn't be the one making that decision for
No,
them.
but I'm saying this, like in one case, like a, a strong, formidable man, like 260 pounds, 98 pounds,
Ugh,
and
yeah,
they kept him alive.
for what?
He had money.
Oh,
He had money.
yeah. That does a disservice. That's such a lack of respect for the person that's suffering. And but again, knowing what they want and what their wishes are is so important.
Yeah.
And how to gently let that happen as opposed to extending suffering, whatever that meant. He may not have been suffering. I mean, I don't know this
Well,
situation,
and,
but
and,
it doesn't,
yeah.
it's not their choice. And it's also not their choice to say, okay, it's time to give up. We're done. We're done.
Well,
It's truly a family and individual's choice. Yeah.
and I could be putting judgment on it, and I don't. I hope I'm not, but it was more of like I was confused on why he wasn't going on his own.
He probably didn't want to, right?
Yeah, but he would say he does. He would say like he would say that. Well, I saw so and so they're coming, and like he would say all the things that you
What you would
hear,
expect.
and yet he just would. And I'm like weird, and so I had to let it go because it's not my family.
Right.
But yet it's like you're in control of when you go. You're
More so than we realize. And I
yeah,
think,
and so
we
I
see
thought
that.
it
Yeah.
was very interesting in this case of like you're in control, but you're choosing to think you're not in control and staying.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. My
Interesting.
dad took his last breath after I had done some final last chores to make sure that everything was tidied up. He waited till I came into the room. And
Yeah.
my mom took her last breath after I left the room. So it's I get it. I wanted to make sure I was there for both of them, and I was.
Yeah.
So that was important to me, and I think it was important to them too.
Well, and now your husband's found the binder.
That's right.
And and the best part of that story is they still live on,
They do. They do.
right? And that shiver earlier, they were saying hello.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So as we wrap up, because all of a sudden, like, oh, the time. Um, what would be like one or two nuggets that you feel if anyone got anything out of this conversation, what would you want to part with the audience with?
From a caregiving perspective,
Yeah, like
obviously.
from your experience, from what you've learned, from all the bumps.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's a no matter what you do or how you do it, it's never a smooth path. Stuff happens.
Hmm.
Uh, just press the correct button, oh, wrong prong bong dong, or
Yeah.
wrong bong prong dong, whatever it is. Wrong path, go backwards. Uh,
Yeah.
you start back and go again. You can always correct everything, or make a different decision. And it is going to be physically, emotionally, and it will be financially exhausting. It just depends on how much. And when a loved one leaves this world physically, it's still not done because there are a lot of things, especially if you're a trustee or an executor. Every piece of paper that you touch afterwards will remind you of them, and it's going to hurt for a long time. And eventually, um, they say it gets better, but I'm not sure it gets better. It just gets different.
Yeah.
So,
I would
um,
agree with that.
yeah, it's just different. There are things that I look back now and said, okay, it's been a couple of years since mom and dad are gone. I miss them still terribly. And but um, I just trying to make each day going better, stronger, because I want to do that and I know what they would want that for me too.
Well, and I just want to add to that, like the knowledge that you have gained with your parents, what a blessing you can have everything documented so your children don't have to go through it as much.
Absolutely. And even still with all the documentation, there's still going to be things that are going to be holes.
Oh yeah,
And
but at least
and
they're more
you
prepared, right?
yeah, just let them know. Let them know that it's going to be okay. And whatever happens, whenever that time is, that you put your trust in them. And if you don't have kids, then find somebody that you trust and let them know they don't have to be perfect at it. There
Hmm.
is no such thing as perfect
Hmm.
as a power of attorney or a trustee or executor. It's uh, it's a very personal and individual thing. And yes, there are things you have to do with the cross the T's and dot the I's. But ultimately, it's those little tiny personal things that happen along the way that it's a space between the lines that are important.
Well, it's like slowing down to spell the noses or
Yeah, yeah,
acknowledging the butterfly.
yeah,
You know, whatever your special thing is from your parents is as you doing that paperwork, look up. They'll be there. They'll be
yeah,
there.
yeah.
So, once again, it's been fabulous
Thank you
conversation
so
with
much.
Nancy May, and um, yeah, thanks for being on the show, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow, what a wonderful conversation with Nancy May. Um, if you haven't picked out a few things that you've learned or to understand better or to um, how to help your aging parents or family members or friends, she's just a wealth of information. Check out her podcast. And like she said in the last nugget, every things are going to go wrong. Just rewind, delete, whatever, restart. Everything's going to work out. And I'll add to that, they just left their suit on this earth. They've never left you. And so, thank you for being part of our community, watching the show. Once again, Adele Bernard, Transition Clarity, and your host of Authentic Conversations.